Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari 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 Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana 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 Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari 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 Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Sari Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana 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 Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Gauranitai, 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 Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, 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 Jaya Gauranitai. Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda ki, Sitaram Lakshmana Hanuman ki jai, Shri Shri Gauranitai ki jai. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, thank you guys all for coming today. So we'll be reading and have some discussion on Bhagavad Gita 1830. Yeah, 1830. So what I'll do is I'll first recite the Sanskrit a couple of times, and then if anyone would like to recite it, then we could do that. And yeah, I want everyone to kind of also, if you'd like to kind of come in front, would that be okay? Yeah. Just because then we can kind of discuss and it'll be easier for us. Yeah. Okay. So I'll just read the Sanskrit out a couple of times, and then if anyone would like to recite it, it's up there, and then we can go from there. Okay, so pravritim cha nivritim cha karya karye baya baya bandha moksham chayaveti Buddhi saparta satviki pravritim cha nivritim cha karye karye baya baya bandha moksham chayaveti Buddhi saparta satviki. Anyone would like to recite? Pravritim cha nivritim cha karye karye baya baya bandha moksham chayaveti Buddhi saparta satviki. Anyone else like to recite? If not, that's okay. Okay, that's fine. We can go for the word for word. Okay, so pravritim, doing. Cha, also. Nivritim, not doing. Cha, and. Karya, what ought to be done. Akarya, and what ought not to be done. Baya, fear. Abhaya, and fearlessness. Bandhanam, bondage. Moksham, liberation. Cha, and. Ya, that which. Yiveti, knows. Buddhi, understanding. Sa, that. Partha, O son of Pritha. Satviki, in the mode of goodness. And then the translation by Srila Prabhupada. O son of Pritha, that understanding by which one knows what ought to be done and what ought not to be done, what is to be feared and what is not to be feared, what is binding and what is liberating is in the mode of goodness. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Performing actions in terms of the directions of the scriptures is called pravriti, or executing actions that deserve to be performed, and actions which are not so directed are not to be performed. One who does not know the scriptural directions becomes entangled in the actions and reactions of work. Understanding which discriminates by intelligence is situated in the mode of goodness. Okay. So we'll just recite some prayers before we start, just to kind of invoke blessings, and so hopefully that the discussion we have, it can kind of provoke some kind of meaning, some insight, and some kind of some food for thought, so that when we go back, there will be something that has stayed with us and we can think about, and yeah, hopefully something we can change. Okay, if you know the prayers, then please join in. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru and Vaishnavamscha Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru and Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Hey Krishna Kuruna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Chakatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhischa Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay. So firstly, thank you guys for all coming today. I know many of you guys have come from kind of work or outside, so I really appreciate everyone coming for some discussion and coming to the temple. So yeah, we hope you enjoy your visit. Yeah, so I just kind of wanted to discuss a bit on this verse, and so yeah, we're kind of coming to the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita. So this is the 18th chapter, where Krishna is basically he's when someone kind of comes to the end of a story or something, they like to give a summary. When I was at school, they always had these. You would always have to kind of write essays in English or even any subject matter, and what you would have to do is you'd have to follow a certain format. And that format would be you start an introduction, and then the conclusion is usually you just repeat what you said before, and so you have to repeat what you said before, but summarize it in a really concise way, just so that the people get what you're saying. And so Krishna's doing that as well. What he's speaking about here, he's speaking about the modes of material nature. And it's very interesting because the modes of material nature are basically, for us in our practical lives, it's nothing which is actually very merciful of Krishna that he's doing this, because what it's doing is he's taking us from where we're at to where we want to go to. We all understand in our lives that actually this place is a place of suffering, and that that this place is a place of suffering, and actually there's something more to life that we're all searching for. Everyone has that kind of cognition or understanding, or if not, it's just covered by many, many layers, which hopefully over time the material world will beat them to realize that there's something more. And so we're at a stage in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna is actually giving the abhidheya, or the process by which one can actually come out of this material energy, from this place of suffering which has been lifetime after lifetime. So what Krishna is describing here is the mode of goodness. And what we understand is there's three modes of material nature. So the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. And these modes, what they do is they basically govern the living entity, and they cause the living entity to act in a certain way. Okay, I'll just give some basic examples just so we can see how it's practically acting now. Probably it's coming to maybe 6:20 now, so it's coming near to the end of the day. Most people are going to be quite tired now, let's just be honest. Been a heavy day at work, people are generally going to feel quite tired. There's going to be yawns, there's going to be all these things. So what we can understand by that, the mode of ignorance is very prominent. Yeah. When the mode of passion is prominent, what that means is that there's a lot of activity that's going on. So usually what happens is during the day, people are performing a lot of activity, whether it's kind of going to work, traveling, all these kind of things. And so that's usually what we know by the mode of passion. The mode of goodness, however, is something which probably most people are kind of a bit foreign to. I can say for myself, but it's actually a state where we're very kind of peaceful. And in this state, it's a really interesting thing that happens in this state, but in this state, you actually come more into the reality of existence. I'm going to say that again because it's actually really, really important. You come more into the reality of existence. Okay? So what this actually means is, for most of our day and most of our lives, we're not really living in the reality. We're chasing things which, if you look at it objectively, you can see that this isn't going to make you happy. But still we're forced into it, we're pulled into it. But if one looks objectively, takes a step back, introspects, they can see, oh wait, this isn't worth chasing. So here Krishna is describing two different types of activities. He says pravritim and nivritim. Pravriti in our Sanskrit language means activities which we should do. Okay? Nivriti means that activities which we shouldn't do. Okay? And And it's like when you went to school. There's always like certain activities which would get you into trouble. You know, we used to have like I don't know if you guys had it, but like a diary. So if you did something wrong, there would be like, you know, you would have like a writing, you would go to detention, all these kind of things. And then if you did something good, you would get like a merit or a distinction or something like that. And they'll count these all up. So these are kind of like that. So you have pravriti, activities which we are good to do for us. Nivriti are activities which aren't so good for us to do. And so then the question is, what is good and what is not good to do? You know, because I'll be honest, in my own life, I'm 24 now, and in my own life, I've had many different people saying many different things about, you know, what's good and bad. And the funny thing is, sometimes people will say the same activity, they'll say that same activity is good for some people. For some people, they'll say that same activity, other people will say is bad for you to do. You know, yeah, and so and we grow up with that. Yeah, we grow up with that. We live with that, and even as we go through our life, we actually go through that. So then there comes a question point where it's actually that: what am I actually chasing in life? Where am I actually going in life? You know, and if one doesn't ask this question, the sooner one delays it, the more regret, the more heaviness in heart one is going to have at the time later on in life. You know, one is going to have this regret and resentment that they're carrying in their heart because they realize that, wait, I've chased the wrong thing. I've spent all this time chasing what someone else wants and not what actually is my real need. So actually where we get our understanding and knowledge from, in that what we should do and shouldn't do actually has to come from the right place. And in this case, we may have some faith in it, but the Bhagavad Gita is actually is the best source for that. And yeah, so I'll stop on that point. And then what I'll say is that, so in this verse, it's interesting because so what we understand is that these Vedic scriptures that we have, they basically speak about truths. Okay, the word Veda literally means knowledge or truth. Okay, so what this means is that actually no, I meant the word Siddhanta. So the word Siddhanta means the conclusion of all truths. So what that means is that if you go through every kind of knowledge in this material world, what you'll find is the conclusion of that you can find in these Vedic literatures. So if one wants to be efficient with time, they will go to the Vedas. Okay, and within the Vedas, there's different types of literatures, but right here in this Krishna conscious movement, there's kind of given a boiled essence. There's an essence of that knowledge. Okay, so we're coming to the right place. And then here Krishna's basically saying that, okay, so, O son of Pritha, that understanding by which one knows what ought to be done and what ought not to be done. I'll just be honest, how many times do we have to make a big decision in our life? Anyone, like, I'll be honest, last year I finished university and I had to make a decision to come to stay at the temple, you know. We're all making very big decisions, you know, and I don't have to tell you guys because you guys are all more experienced than me. So everyone actually has to make very key decisions, and those big decisions are actually made up of the day-to-day, moment-to-moment decisions we make in our life. So actually, this verse is actually for each and every one of us. And what this is actually saying is that understanding by which one knows what ought to be done and what not to be done. That's important, you know. And the interesting thing is, what I found in my own life is that the more I tried to contemplate of what is the best thing to do in my life or what is not the best thing to do, the more I'll be honest, for myself, I become confused. Anyone else found that, is it just me? The more I actually tried to think about, I could do this, but then I'm thinking, wait, but if I do that, then this thing will happen. Or if I do that, then this thing will happen. And you just for me, I go into a spiral. And I get more confused than I was in the first place. And so some people can then think like, you know what, I'm just going to settle in, I'll carry on with what I'm doing and I'll be okay. But this is actually very important because Krishna's giving something here. And he gives a way out. In the Bhagavad Gita, in a verse in chapter 10, text 10, Krishna says that when one devotes himself to me, he becomes, he gives the understanding by which one can come to him. Okay, same word, he gives the understanding by which one can come to him. So how does that link into this, where Krishna is saying that one has to discriminate and they have to learn the scriptures and they have to know the scriptures? Because for most of, at least for me, I haven't spent so much time learning the scriptures, and I'm already making decisions. So then how does that work? I'm making decisions already, but I don't know so much scripture myself. We come into a dichotomy. And Krishna is very kind, because he says that one who just engages in devotional service, he gives the understanding by which they come to him. And this is like a spectrum, because in that verse it says one who's fully devoted, he gives the full understanding. So for someone who's slightly devoted, he'll still give that understanding, you know? So we don't have to worry so much. There's another purple which basically describes Krishna, and he basically says how he's he says that one may have a spiritual teacher, one may have no idea how to discriminate between the scriptures, but Krishna is within the heart, and so what that means is he'll give the guidance for that person, you know. So it requires in this purport, Srila Prabhupada is this saying that we have to know the scriptures, and this is true, but this point of knowing the scriptures is just our endeavor, okay? Just like, for example, everyone here made an endeavor to come here today, but there's no guarantee it was going to happen, no? So many other things went according to your way so that you could come, yeah? It's not just the fact that, oh, actually, you know, I decided to come and then I could come. No, there were so many other things. Traffic could have happened, an accident could have happened, you know, rain, any of these things could have happened. So what this is saying is that we're making some endeavor here to understand the scriptures, to show that, okay, Krishna, I really want to know the truth. I want to know what is the purpose of my existence. I'm confused in my life. Where can I go? What's the next step in my life? You know? And so then what Krishna does is, by that endeavor, he then starts to reveal himself and the truth more and more to you. Okay? And what this means is that in the scriptures it's described that actually there's an indwelling kind of a person within our heart who's constantly guiding the wanderings of the living entities. In our scriptures it's called the super soul, you know? And it basically describes the super soul as an eternal companion who's been with us for lifetime after lifetime. You know, you can't have someone who's closer to the soul than the super soul. And then the question is, how do we start to then get in touch with that super soul? Krishna's saying here, he gives that understanding, okay? Then what's the point in how do we come closer to that stage, you know? And so what actually happens in our life is in spiritual life, or even just our normal life, we can understand that we start to have some understanding that I need to act like this, I need to act like that. And these are principles we live by. Okay, so for example, what we're living in the temple right now for me, and one of the kind of principles we live by is waking up in the morning early. We understand that the morning hours is very good for kind of the mode of goodness time. It creates a very peaceful atmosphere, so you can engage in your meditation, your connection very well. But what happens over time is your life actually becomes more and more intimate and more specific. Okay, and this is where life actually becomes very, very exciting. Life doesn't just become, oh, I'm waking up, I'm doing this again and again. Life becomes an excitement as, where's my Lord going to point me today? Where's he going to show me to go today? What adventure am I going to go on today? You know? And it's not dependent on any other material relationship. It's not dependent on any other activity. Because the Lord is constantly in your heart. He's always there ready to reciprocate. Isn't that exciting? You know? We're all looking for this adventure in our life. And actually this is what Krishna is actually describing here when he's saying that he gives this understanding. Then our question becomes, when we go into our day, when we go into our life, is where is Krishna? Where is God? Where is my next step in my life? And it doesn't have to be a burden, or it doesn't have to be something which is feared or something which creates anxiety, but it actually becomes a kind of excitement in our life. I feel when I've seen a lot of people in the world, I've seen that so much of life is that, oh, I need to get this done, I need to do this, I need to do this, if I don't do this, these things won't happen. And there's definitely a place for that. I'm not cancelling it out. I'm not just saying it because I've shaved my head and I'm living here right now. You know, there's definitely a place for that we need to put things into play. But there's also an aspect of it where it's that you can get too much caught up in that, as Srila Prabhupada is saying here, in that one who does not know the scriptural directions becomes entangled in the actions and reactions of work. If one doesn't actually take this into account and take a step back from life, they'll get too much absorbed in this and think this is the all in all. And what happens is it's difficult, because when that happens, it actually it clings to the heart. Attachments cling to the heart. So what that means is that when it speaks about what is binding, what is liberating, we can say that, oh yeah, I'm not attached to these things. I don't need these things. I can make my choice. A lot of the times it's like, oh yeah, if I had the time, I would do this. If I had the time, I would do this. But actually, it's not like that, because you're actually bound to this habit, and it's actually seated within your heart so deeply that you can't get rid of it. You actually can't get rid of it. Anyway, so what this is saying is, by approaching the Lord in devotional service, by this kind of basic principle, more and more we start to live in a life in excitement. And then in one of our other texts, it's called the Srimad Bhagavatam. Some of you may have heard this, and this is kind of this is a text which is given kind of after the Bhagavad Gita. Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda ki, Shri Shri Gaunitai, Shri Shri Sitaram Lakshmana Hanuman ki jai. So there's another text called the Srimad Bhagavatam, and this is a text which is usually kind of read and studied after the Bhagavad Gita. And in one pastime in the pastimes of Krishna, what happens is there's a description of Krishna as this indwelling Lord in the heart. And what it says is that Krishna, it gives an analogy to Krishna's Krishna's running away from a demon at this time. And what it describes is that it gives an analogy to our own heart. It says that Krishna's running away out of fear from this demon. It says that Krishna enters our heart out of fear. Why is Krishna afraid? Krishna is afraid because he's afraid that actually, if we're bound in this ocean of sense gratification, this ocean of misery, this ocean of selflessness, we're going to be bound and we're not going to be happy. Isn't that kind? Have you ever heard of someone who's afraid of your own suffering? They're afraid of your own suffering. And not just are they afraid of your own suffering, they actually know better than you what your own suffering is. Sometimes, at least for me, when I think of someone who's afraid of my own suffering, I think of my mother. But a lot of the times, my mother may not know everything about what's best for me, And it's not a fault on her part, but the fact is that Krishna has that same mood. There's a verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam as well which describes how Krishna's love is like the mother's love, but thousands of times more. Thousands of times more. So you have someone who's in your heart, and he loves you, and he knows better than you what's actually going to hurt you, what's going to bind you, And so then the question is, okay, well, how do I get to know? This person, he's sitting here on a stage and he's saying these things, but how do I actually find this person? The interesting thing about it is that it's actually Krishna wants our heart. So what that means is we have to make some endeavor towards him. And so just like all of you have taken the time out to come here, there'll be some kind of reciprocation, some kind of benefit that you come from coming here. It may not be immediate, but you'll see it over your life. I'll be honest, when I was younger, what happened was I used to get these sweets. I think you can still get them at the entrance. The pink sweets, yeah. And I used to get them sent home every month. So when me and my mum would be at home, and we used to get one each month, and we used to just kind of be waiting for that, And I had no idea of what kind of Krishna conscious spiritual life, anything like that was. No idea, but I just used to wait for that. So I was like, me and my mum would just be like, yeah, let's go for the sweets. And just by that, so much has happened from that. There's been so much reciprocation that's happened just from that. Maybe along the line. But just by making a small effort, Krishna reciprocates in such a big way. The other thing I wanted to touch on was about how even in our scriptures, that there's so many different statements which can be applied to so many different people, you know. So for example, I'm just thinking of a good example. To be honest, even today there's been so many discussions about different scriptural references and how you can how they can be applied in different ways. But what I want to kind of, I'll give an example actually. Again, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a part where Krishna basically, Krishna and Arjuna are the same personalities in this discussion. What happens is Arjuna is kind of put in a predicament where he's told by his wife Draupadi that he shouldn't cut the hair of an enemy, or he shouldn't kill an enemy. But then on the other end of the stick, he's told by all his brothers and Krishna, who's the Supreme Lord, that actually no, this person should be killed. And both have backing from scriptural references. So it's coming into a dilemma where there's backing on both parts. What's the best thing to do? You know? And in that moment, what happens is there's a verse, a very sweet verse, and what it says is that Arjuna understood the heart and the intent of Krishna, and then he acted. So this again means something very, very important in our lives, because what it means is that more than what we externally do in our lives, what's actually more important is the mood and what's going on in the heart. Why am I actually doing what I'm doing? And when we become more aware of that, we can actually start to come into a space of honesty with ourselves, and we can come to a mood of prayer, you know? Because when we start to become honest about our heart and where we're going, we can actually make a very honest and sincere prayer. And that's actually where the Lord reciprocates. Because the Lord He wants a relationship. How can I have a relationship with someone who's lying to me, or who's cheating me, who's not really being fully honest with me? You can't really have a relationship with that person. There's not a relationship of openness, trust, you know? So for that to be the case, we actually have to be able to have a space in our heart where we can be honest. And then by that, we can actually start to approach the Lord. You know, does that make some sense? And yeah, and there's another chapter in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's in the second canto, and it describes this. We're speaking a lot about the Lord in the heart here, and there's a whole chapter describing this Lord in the heart. And what it does is it goes into so much more depth about the descriptions of the Lord in the heart and all these kind of things. And there's a very sweet verse in it. Basically, it's if you wanted to know, it's 2:10. And what it describes is that it describes what the Lord in the heart looks like, and one of the descriptions that really kind of touched my heart and moved my heart was that it says the Lord in the heart, He has a necklace around His neck. He has a necklace, obviously, around His neck. He has a necklace, and the necklace has a calf on it. You know, and we know that Krishna is Govinda. You know, He's Gopal. He's the protector of His cows. So who are His cows? His cows are actually His devotees. You know, they're His children. And one of the reasons it says that why Krishna's cows are so dear to Him, one of the reasons that is the case is because it's said that when the cows are actually in Vrindavan, they're doing their services, they carry so much milk in their udders, and the milk goes to who? The milk goes to it goes to all the residents of Vrindavan. So in that way, they're making such large sacrifice. They're carrying so much milk. They're carrying so much weight for the Lord, that actually the Lord is so happy with them. He's so pleased with them that He then carries them around your neck. Imagine that you have, when people kind of fall in love and all these kind of things, they may have like a tattoo of their of the name of their spouse or the person they fall in love with. It's the same mood. You know, we speak about devotion to the Lord, but look at the Lord's devotion to His devotee. You know, he has a necklace with His devotee on it. Isn't that sweet? So this is the Lord in the heart that we're actually looking for. You know, yeah. So then the question is that as we were saying about this honesty, how do we then come into a space where we can start to trust this guidance. I'm sure all of you have had in your life some kind of inner calling, some kind of urge, some kind of feeling at some point where you felt like something's more. I'm not doing what I'm meant to be doing. There's something more in my life that I need. You know, I definitely remember having this kind of years before I even started my kind of spiritual journey. There was definitely particular times where I had like moments of just like a spark of something, and I was like, and I look back and I was like, yeah, that wasn't actually me. That was actually the Lord in my heart saying there's actually a different journey I'm meant to go on. You know, it doesn't mean it'll happen immediately, but what it means is that there's something more to our life. And I'm sure every one of us has had moments like that in our life where we felt some kind of inner calling, some kind of inspiration, aspiration to look in a different direction. You know? So then the question is, how can we start to trust that calling? You know? How can we start to trust that calling? And in the same chapter in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it basically describes how the verses 2 to 37, if you wanted, but it describes that those who drink through oral reception, fully filled with the nectarian message of Lord Krishna. So what this means is that those who kind of listen to these messages of the Lord, what actually happens is, one is then able to get to know the Lord, and then you're able to trust Him, isn't it? If I say to someone, how do I trust someone? How do I trust someone's guidance? How do I trust someone? First, you want to get to know, how do they treat other people? Who are they? What do they do? What do they look like? You know, you want to get to know them and see, okay, they're going like this with different people. Okay, I see, okay, they seem to have a good heart. They're not going to manipulate me. Okay, let me take a step with them. Let me see where it goes. You know, I'll kind of put my feet in the water. And then over time, when you start to see how this person reciprocates, then you start to feel like, oh, I can give a bit more. I can give a bit more. So this kind of oral reception, this hearing of the Lord's pastimes, it actually starts to awaken trust and faith in our heart. And what does it mean when you have some trust and faith in someone? What it means is you can start to let go. You can start to let go of what your fears are, isn't it? When you're around people you trust, do you notice there's a sense of like you can relax? You can let your shoulders down. You can be yourself, you know? So that's actually a reflection of our relationship with Krishna. Those people that we can be safe around, those people there, that's actually a relation. That's a reflection of the relationship we have with Krishna, you know. And so, by hearing these pastimes, then of the Lord, then actually what can happen is we start to trust the Lord more and more, and then He starts to then He starts to speak to us. In the Bhagavad Gita, it says that that when one is kind of comes to the mode of goodness, as we're saying, the Lord then he becomes, one has reached the super soul. And what it says is that the super soul is always speaking to us. You know, it's like a radio. He's constantly speaking to us. He's constantly guiding us. And the more and more we start to in tune with that, the more and more we'll start to realize throughout our day, He's constantly reciprocating, constantly speaking to us, constantly guiding to us, hey, go in this direction. Hey, look in this direction. You know? And yeah, so I just wanted to kind of end on maybe a couple of kind of, like stories or pastimes of the Lord, just so that it can inspire us to take those steps in our life, which may be out there, which we may have not looked at so much, but that the Lord is hopefully kind of guiding us towards. And so one was actually about, not necessarily stories, but different just parts of different pastimes. And one is a very well-known one, but we're speaking about trust in the Lord. You know, it makes sense. If I'm the servant, then I have to trust the master. But if you look on the other end of the stick, the master also has to trust the servant. Yeah. So in a similar, in a pastime in the 9th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, what happens is there's a part where the Lord says that I'm not independent. I'm actually dependent on my devotee. Then he doesn't just say that. He says not even my devotee, but a devotee of my devotee. Okay? And for us, that may seem like, what does that mean? But that's a big statement. That's a really big statement. Because factually, the Lord is independent. if we look at it from a very objective point of view, the Lord is completely independent. He's completely full in renunciation. He's Purnam. He doesn't need anything from any of us. Okay? But actually he does need us. We're part and parcel of him, and when we're not connected with him, he's not actually happy. So what this actually means is that when he says that he's dependent on us, it means that he's actually in need of us. You know? The Lord who's completely full and he's supreme, he actually still needs his children back. You know? And what it then describes is that, so it's not, forget even a devotee of his devotee. And why is that important to us? That's important to us because a lot of the times we can come to the temple and feel like, I don't really know who Krishna is. I don't have so much connection. And then what we can feel is that, okay, I may not have much connection, but the people I'm around, some of them have connection to Krishna. You know, Srila Prabhupada, for example, that's the only reason we're here, but he's our connection. And similarly, when we have kind of senior people in our life, spiritual teachers in our life, that we have some connection with, then we can see that, okay, they have connection with Krishna. Then I have some access. You know? There's another pastime in another book called the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and what it describes is how there's one personality called Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and what it describes is when Lord Chaitanya, who's another incarnation of the Lord, it describes how he basically, when he comes and sees Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he becomes so happy in his heart, and he says that I'm so happy to see you, and he says that not only are you dear to me, but everyone in your village, even the dogs, are dear to me. Imagine hearing that. Even the dogs in your village are dear to me. You know, it's a completely kind of, to me at least when I hear it, it's completely ludicrous. I hear it and I'm like, what? How does that kind of resonate at all? But this is the love that the Lord has for us, and he's waiting to reveal that to us. You know. And I'll just end on this last point then. Part of this process of the Lord saying that he gives the understanding by which we can come to him, part of this understanding is that we've heard these statements today, and some of us may have heard it many times, that the Lord loves us so much. We've heard these pastimes before, but then the process is, okay, I've heard this. Why then are my actions not in line with what I've heard? There's some kind of dysfunction. There's a gap between what I'm hearing and where I'm acting. And so then this is where the knowledge, or the knowledge has to come from the heart. It actually has to become a realization. And what in Sanskrit we call this vigyan. You know, it describes in our scriptures that actually we're Satchit and Ananda. One of these factors is we're full of knowledge, chit. So what this means is that actually all this knowledge that we're hearing is fully there in our heart. It's fully there in our heart, just waiting to be opened up almost. You know, it's already there, but we're just not aware of it. Then the question is, how does that knowledge become awakened almost? You know, and it's actually through some kind of sacrifice, some kind of austerity, some kind of somewhere where we put ourselves out for the Lord, and that austerity is specifically in our case devotional service. And when we make that step, slowly, this knowledge starts to become revealed to us, and we can then start to live that. We can start to live that knowledge, you know. We can actually start to live this fact that actually Krishna is actually always within my heart and ready to reciprocate with me at every moment. You know, that can start to slowly become our reality more and more. You know, and all this knowledge then will become revealed in the heart. So yeah, I'll stop there and just see if there are any questions, comments, criticisms, or anything, and yeah, we can go from there. Anyone? Yes.
I was saying that when we pray to Krishna, then Krishna reveals everything in our heart. I was also thinking about there's a verse that says that one who has implicit faith in the spiritual master, then all the truths become revealed to him.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was thinking that for us, the spiritual
Yeah, that's a very sweet, we were actually just speaking about that earlier in our class. But yeah, that's a very sweet, that was one of my favorite verses actually, and it's very nice as well because for me, what I found was like I went through a phase of reading the scriptures a lot, and what I found was after some time it was just knowledge for me. I didn't actually, there wasn't any realization or understanding. It was all just up here. And then after some time, I was forced to kind of look in a different direction. And then I then looked at the scriptures from a completely different lens. And as you're kind of describing, that lens is more from actually, from a lens of understanding the context, which is kind of what you're describing. So yeah, thank you for that comment. Anyone else? Comments or questions? Okay. Yeah. Tapasya basically means, I think Srila Prabhupada describes it as, yeah, I remember actually thinking about this before. It's a really funny thing because tapasya means something which is hard work for us, basically, some kind of austerity or some kind of difficulty for us. And we also hear that bhakti is joyfully performed in all these statements. The reason it's tapasya is because we're not used to it. Right now in our state, we're not actually used to performing bhakti. And because we're not actually used to performing bhakti, it's a tapasya. Even though it's natural to the real self, it's a tapasya for us because we're conditioned right now to this. So at least for me, what I found is that the reason these things are tapasya is because it's actually, we're not used to it. Does that help to some degree? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So how to know? Somebody say if you're not feeling that satisfaction, then it means that something's wrong in the process of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you know whether it's good discomfort or whether it's actually a warning sign?
Yeah. I guess there's two things. One thing I found is that you'll kind of be given signs, you know. When one feels kind of full in the heart, you will have all been around certain personalities or people when we can see these people are full in the heart. They don't need anything else. They're feeling some sense of fulfillment. And when you can see those people, you can, over time, I'm saying, but we can also start to feel that in ourselves after some practice. And then what happens is we get some faith in that. Sometimes, at least for me, it was more like, actually I won't go into that, but we can start to have faith in that fulfillment. And not just that, but as you start to experience that fulfillment more and more, you will, Krishna will give you clarification along that way that you're moving in the right direction. It's not something we need to kind of worry so much about. He'll start to show you signs that, yeah, you're moving in the right direction. You'll feel more and more fulfillment of that happening in your life. The other thing I just want to add on that is this is a very nice connection between our philosophy and how we experience our philosophy. There was one statement we speak about how do we know our whole process is about pleasing Krishna. We'll end on this. About pleasing Krishna. And usually, Srila Prabhupada, when devotees ask the question, how do you know when Krishna's pleased? Srila Prabhupada's standard statement was, you know Krishna's pleased when the spiritual master's pleased. You know, one time a devotee asked, how do you know Krishna's pleased? And Srila Prabhupada said, you'll know Krishna's pleased when you're happy. Why is that? Because we're part and parcel of Krishna. If Krishna's happy, we're part and parcel of Krishna. So when we're joyful in our heart, then that means that Krishna's happy. So it's a very sweet kind of interconnection between our philosophy and our reality as well. So yeah, I hope that gives some clarification, but thank you for your question. Any other questions? I think we have to end there anyway. So yeah, please feel free to stay. We'll be having Arati now where kind of darshan curtains will open and we'll be singing. So yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare